ecocide and genocide, climate crisis and the rise of fascism, narratives can be pathways for systems change. The violence against the earth and its peoples is the outcome of hundreds of years of monocultures, narratives about who belongs, who decides, what has value, what counts as growth, and the endless bureaucracy of the self. These systems of meaning were imposed, and they can be dismantled. The rhizome is an underground structure connecting root to root, decentralizing knowledge, a web of life. It's the metaphor and the strategy, a global network of narrative practitioners dedicated to challenge the assumptions of capitalist modernity and cultivating new, ancient, and emerging narratives, pathways for regenerative futures. These pathways emerge from a deep questioning in a time where change is measuring metrics, likes, carbon capture, tokens of techno-optimism and market-driven solutions, while oppressive structures remain intact. True regeneration requires interwoven conditions for systems change: justice, economics, governance, land, and spirit. Change is a pathway, not an outcome. If you're a narrative practitioner, storyteller, land defender, artist, hacker, researcher, ready to challenge the dominant systems, the rhizome is for you.
That was just a glimpse of the experience that we had as part of the Rhizome Fellowship last year, guided by Culture Hub Labs. And I'll just say a few words and share a couple of things with you guys. It's been an incredible experience, and I think it has shaped how, at least how I perceive systems change, and how I could experience the change happening, and the possibility of change. Like, I've learned through this fellowship an incredible tool, and I never could imagine that what we think and assume and say about the world could have such a powerful impact. And I wanted to share very briefly, I'll share the link later, but through this 8-month training, that was the Horizon Fellowship, we had this 8-month training and an in-person gathering. It was an incredible journey, an amazing experience. And I had to write down an article to share with the world what we had been through. So this is like the first thing I wanted to share as well. And what I felt there in this building called the Maloca in Costa Rica, I have no words for it. I could feel like a lot of committed people really changing the world in their local places. And we were learning this incredible tool to transform reality through narratives. This is me presenting about TNI, and this is Luna stewarding my notes during one of the sessions. And this is the vibes that I got there when I was at the gathering, like this feeling of possibility through what we were doing, coming together, people from all around the world, learning these tools. I felt like, okay, this is the way. We are doing something right here. And yeah, you can write the article. I'll share the link, and you may find it relevant because I included some very simple explanations about one part of the methodology that Tiffany and Melandri will be sharing with us today. And I shared some metaphors to be able to grasp, because this is a very deep and layered, complex stuff that we will get a glimpse on today. But maybe this can help you unpack and learn a bit more besides all the materials that they will be sharing. And I also wanted to share something really exciting with you. I hope the screen changed to an image that looks like an eye or some things, so letting you know. So this is what we will be publishing very soon. This is a case study that we've been working on. And this is our narrative hack after all the months last year working on what do we want to hack exactly, what it is that we want to change from the inside in a deep, powerful way. we found out that transition and community-led initiatives in a lot of places, and by places, I do not mean physical places, I mean also spaces and conversational spaces, social media, press, and you name it, online worlds, this sort of thing. Sometimes the communities were absent. No one was naming them, despite this kind of work being essential for us to thrive in the midst of the polycrisis. So we said, okay, what we want to change is how people perceive community-led change and transition communities. We wanted to shift this view from transition as, oh, look at these nice people doing nice things, interesting, next, towards, oh, wow, this is essential infrastructure. We should all be doing this and joining a transition community or a transition or a group doing nice stuff or great stuff in our neighborhood. Or if there's not any, I'm gonna create one. Let's do it. So shifting the perspective to what it is, this kind of communities and this kind of climate action. So this is the reframe that we've been developing and will be publishing very soon. And I'm so thrilled that this is going live. And this is not only something that we are doing, but we are also inviting everyone to take part of. So we will be sharing also kind of steps and possibilities of how you can use it as well. So that's it from me. And I'm going to hand over to Melandri and Tiffany because they have really interesting stuff to share. And I think that what I just shared, like out of the blue, it will make more sense after listening to the methodology. You will understand a bit better. Maybe it was a bit premature to share now, but let's see. Yeah. Welcome, Melandri and Tiffany. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you everyone for being here. It's nice to meet you all. So I'm just going to share a little bit about Culture Hack Labs before we kick off. Culture Hack Labs is a not-for-profit consultancy that sort of was born out of another organization called The Rules that operated from 2012 until 2019 and focused on addressing the root causes of structural violence, inequality, and injustice. We spent over a decade working with movements across the Global South, and we developed a multidisciplinary practices that bring together data analysis, cognitive disciplines, linguistics, and anthropology, as well as political strategy in service of life. So out of this experience, we then formalized the Culture Hack method, which supports organizations and social movements to create narrative actions to create systems change, which Tiffany will be taking us into shortly. Thank you.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Esther, for bringing us on board. We're big fans of the movement of Transition Network International. So it's really exciting to, see you all in person here. And so what we're going to do today is have a little taste of what narrative-led systems change is and the method by which we actually do it in practice. And so we're going to take you through a bit of theory and then a bit of the method, which goes through how we do our research, our reframing, and our narrative interventions. And then we will give you a brief case study, which hopefully brings this method to life, a case study in Mexico, where some of our colleagues are based. And then we will do an exercise. So it will get practical and you'll have a taste of some linguistic decoding tools that you can take back to your organizations and to your activism. So if you move to the next slide, brilliant. First, we go through the basics of narrative-led systems change. And just a couple of definitions. Systems being groups of actors and materials that are coordinated in a purposeful way. They can be found across social, ecological, economic domains. And the context here, our understanding of systems is rooted in systems theory, complexity science, and evolutionary theory. And then we move to narratives. which are the interpretive social structures that frame our experience and help us make sense of everyday reality. And we'll dive into this a little bit deeper in a bit, but it's just worth highlighting two parts about narratives. Is one, they frame what we see, and two, they guide what we do. So they have material effects, they have behavioral effects, and much of this happens on a subconscious, unconscious level. And our understanding of narratives, if you're interested and want to dive deeper, is rooted in the field of embodied cognition. And Esther just wrote this on the chat, but I forgot to mention that please do type in your questions as we go along, and we will do our best to answer them. And actually, if we're a small group, we can even open it up to a little discussion later. So yeah, back to narrative-led systems change. The core idea here is that when you change the narrative, you change the system. So in other words, by shifting these narratives, these shared cognitive maps and beliefs and values and stories that are sustaining a particular system, we can then redefine what is possible and ultimately reshape the very system itself. And what does this mean in times of system collapse, in the current metacrisis that we're finding ourselves in? At the core of the metacrisis, it's really a crisis of culture. And culture being the values and beliefs and ontologies that drive human behavior. Cultures really shape how we relate to ourselves on a very fundamental level, how we relate to each other and how we relate to the network of life around us. And currently, we are living in the culture of the Anthropocene. So this is a growth-driven capitalist culture, particularly now in its neoliberal phase. It's commodifying life. It's reinforcing separation and exploitation and extraction. And we're going to show you a 2-minute video from our organization to give you a taste of this, the kind of polycrisis, the metacrisis, and all the compounding factors. I think the audio is not working for us, Melandri. Thanks. And we could come back to the video if that's possible in a bit, maybe. And someone just asked to get a copy of the slides. Of course, we will send you the slides and a bunch of links to resources, giving you access to the method online and also all the theory behind it. So go for it, Melandri.
The Anthropocene is the most recent period in Earth's history, when human activity has had a significant impact on the planet's climate and ecosystems. The Anthropocene can be seen as the host of consequences that derive of othering nature, people, and living beings in favor of the greed of a few. But is it a symptom or a disease? The current compounding crisis related to destructive human behaviors and social activity have roots in structural inequalities, cultural belief systems, and dominant narratives. What is the origin of this culture? Why are we here? What else is possible? We invite you to understand and confront the underlying worldviews that gave birth to the Western monoculture. These include capitalism, neoliberalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, colonialism, enclosure, enslavement, genocide, extraction of the natural world, exploitation of human beings, and the more than human world. We invite you to dismantle the building blocks of the current systemic crisis. At Culture Hack, we explicitly, unapologetically root ourselves in life-affirming, life-valuing, structural and critical theory. Our methodology was built upon the understanding that our ultimate goal is to fundamentally shift the dominant cultural narratives that create, sustain, and perpetuate the Anthropocene. Living outside the Anthropocene requires allowing ourselves to imagine and design alternatives, ancient futures, systems, and societies narratives that will give birth to the big transformation.
In the Anthropocene.
Okay, thank you so much, Melandri. So, narratives. I'm going to go a bit deeper into what they actually are and how they function to create reality. So on the next slide, you'll see that we often use this metaphor of maps to understand how narratives function. And maps are really like narratives in the sense that we use them to orient ourselves within a territory so we can navigate this territory more efficiently and effectively. And narratives or maps frame our raw experience or the territory to help us make sense of the world and provide the justifications and basis for our actions and behavior. So here you can see this material effect element. And the example of the narrative of nature is a resource or a commodity then sets into play a bunch of actions like a forest being seen as more valuable cut down. So this narrative is justifying extractive behavior like deforestation. And I'm sure you're all working a lot with narratives in your work. So I hope this theory and practice will be useful for you. So if we move to the next slide, I want to introduce you to our distinct approach to narrative-led systems change. So at Culture Hack, you could almost see this as our theory of change, which is justice plus ontological shift, or ontoshift for short. And what we're really trying to do here is disrupt dominant narratives and develop new narratives that enable justice plus ontoshift. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. If you move to the next slide, you will see, okay, justice, first term. This includes decolonization, reparation, repairing of harms, righting wrongs. It's very much a change in structural inequality and a dismantling of systems of oppression. And then ontology, or an ontoshift, is what we want to happen, a change in the very ways we know and the very ways we are in the world, dismantling this monoculture. And ontology is just a fancy philosophical word for basically saying the kind of upstream, deep cultural values, like the very ways we relate to and sense the world and the very ways we are in the world. And our approach here is that justice is an essential basis, but on its own, it is not enough. And to truly move beyond the anthropocentric and capitalist cultures and systems we find ourselves in, new ontologies are essential. So new deep cultural values are essential. So in other words, this ontological shift means we need new languages and beliefs and worldviews that really shift how we fundamentally see our place in the web of life. So in this graph, just to visualize this approach, you can see that we're moving from systems crisis to regenerative systems. So regenerative systems being both justice and entailing an ontological shift. So here it's not only about being reactive and fighting harms, but also about being proactive and building the regenerative worlds that we wish to usher in. So this is what Transition Network is very good at. So I'm sure this approach resonates with you. And just a quick example, if you go back on, sorry, the slide before, Melandri, just a quick example to ground this approach, a narrative. Let's say we're doing a narrative hack on land activism, and we're working with activists to find a common narrative for the movement. So we want to develop narratives or languages or stories that not only point to decolonization and distribution of ownership of the land, which is the justice part, but we also want to ensure we're cultivating a change in the values further upstream. So land is being talked about and reframed as alive and as our ancestor and as our kin. And this is the ontological shift part. So the next slide, you'll see this beautiful quote by philosopher Bayo Akomolafe that captures this approach quite nicely, that demands for social justice may get us a seat at the table, but they will never let us leave the house of modernity. So to leave this house of colonial, capitalist, anthropocentric modernity, we need new ontologies. And There's a bunch of further reading and the theories that have informed our thinking and links to the method. On this slide, we'll send all the links to you as well. But before we move on to the method and how we actually achieve narrative-led systems change, I'm just going to pass to Esther to ground us and get us back into our bodies after all this heady cognitive stuff.
Thank you so much. Yeah, amazing. It's so bad that I was sharing like emojis and everything, and I'm also a speaker. But I really love that. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, an invitation, because probably our minds are full with what Tiffany and Melandri have been sharing. And maybe let's see if we can sit back and feel our bodies a little bit and let this information settle in our bodies and see how this is moving inside us. Maybe our breath has changed a bit, or maybe our heart is beating a bit different, or maybe we have a feeling of butterflies of change in our stomach. Let's take a couple of nice deep breaths and just let it settle. Maybe you feel the need to stretch or shake or move a bit. Feel free to do, of course. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's always so good to come back to the body. Back to you, ears.
Hi, everyone. So how do we actually achieve narrative-led systems change? I'm going to share a little bit about the Culture Act method, which aims to create actions for systems change. So the Culture Act method is a radicalized decolonial methodology that has been the work of a collective of people, including artists, land defenders, activists, academics, and hackers, and has had many iterations over the years. So this 5-pathway methodology is open source, which means you're free to use it as you see fit. And although we present it in steps, it is not linear, and you can essentially use it as however you want and move through the methodology however you see fit. So yeah, for the purposes of this workshop, I'll be moving through it in the way that we position it for our RISO methodology. So the first step is the ask step or ask pathway. And essentially what this is, it's a crafting of our point of view statement, or it can also be thought of as a manifesto that essentially provides the compass to your narrative intervention. The statement considers who you are representing, what you're standing for, your ethics, and what you wish to achieve. Essentially serving, like I said, as the compass for your research. At Culture Hack, we also tend to include humans and more than humans in this understanding. And so, you know, as you move through our methodology, you'll often find yourself moving between the point of view and the listening phase, or the point of view and the understand phase, because it very much serves the basis of the method. So the next step is the listen phase. So in this step, we essentially just transform the point of view into a listening model to explore the narrative space. So the listening model consists of your methodology, essentially, for your research or your hack. And what this contains is what we refer to as a qualitative methodology is our small listening, which is a lot more interpersonal and involves things like interviews and focus groups, or even examining reports. And then the big listening is often more data-driven work. So we often then refer to things like social scraping tools like Meltwater in order to achieve this. And then, yeah, we also use a term called narrative communities, but I won't go into that too deeply. And that's just how we refer to narratives out in the sphere. So yeah, essentially, That's the listening model. And once you have established the narratives that you want to hack, we then move into the understand phase. So the understand phase helps us to essentially take the narratives that are interesting to us and put them on the justice and ontology axis that Tiffany mentioned earlier. And this will basically reveal the acupuncture points for the narratives that you wish to hack. So we'll find a space where we have a particular community or a discourse that is maybe moving between a more hegemonic narrative into something a little bit more alternative. And so we'll find that, and that will be our acupuncture point for the hack, or the audience that we wish to sort of channel the hack through. And then we move into the recode phase. So the recode phase involves developing your narrative strategy, which, as I said earlier, we're always moving between a point of view, and that's your compass. So when you go into the recode phase, you'll go back to your point of view and see what your narrative intention will be from this point. So here we get practical and we start to define audiences, which is the group that you wish to target with your hack. You set your narrative objectives, which is the strategic direction in which you want to shift the public discourse, and you begin the reframe process, which is decoding the hegemonic narratives and then recoding them to support what your point of view is. So Tiffany and I will be taking you through an exercise later on that sort of emphasizes a little bit more about the recode section. And then in the final phase, we have our hack. So in the culture hack method, the hack implementation phase is really where the creative juices start to flow and you start to consider community organizing. So, ultimately, there's no change without community organizing and no change without narrative change. So this is really where the magic happens. And ultimately, what culture hack is it's designed as a cycle of narrative actions and learnings. The hacks can be really as small as a meme or as big as an international campaign, the launch of an app or a public demonstration. Critical thinking and reiteration are key parts of our methodology. So the full method is available online at this link. We'll be sharing the slides afterwards, and you're more than welcome to go through the exercises and watch the videos in your own time to get a more in-depth understanding of the hack.
Thanks so much, Melandri. And now we will hopefully bring all this quite abstract theory to life by giving you a small example. And I love the comment, yes to memes. Yeah, we're big meme people in Culture Hack. I really would advise you to go to our website because there's a lot of documentaries on our different hacks and information about them. But right now we'll go through one that happened in Mexico in 2018 called Yo Prefiero el Lago. And basically, this was a hack to counter plans for building a massive international airport and megacity on indigenous lands and an ancient lake named Lake Texcoco. So if you move to the next slide. This movement developed to try and counter this development activity, and communities of the lake, activists, organizations from the cities close by, and culture hack labs, lots of people got together to design the narrative research needed to set us up for the narrative intervention. And it's worth mentioning that this bunch of stakeholders was the human and the more than human world. There was a beautiful poetic letter of the lake, in which the lake spoke through communities who have the capacities to listen to the land and the lake and understand what they're saying. So again, we're trying to always bring this more animist or indigenous way of perceiving the world and rippling out circles beyond the human to the more than human as ways of knowing and speaking. And if we move to this mapping slide, perfect. So what happened was a new government was elected who presented themselves as progressive, and they promised a public consultation or a referendum where they had two options. Basically, shall we build this airport here on the lake, or should we build the airport elsewhere? So there were only two options. So under the illusion of choice, the new government was actually replicating these profit growth, neoliberal discourses and this false promise of trickle-down economics, because they said the lake would be the airport would benefit everybody. And there was no option for questioning the motivations of the airport, or no option for no airport at all, and if it would actually be good for the local people. So the narrative objective here of the hack was to understand the narrative space or the public discourse, and then develop a third option, which was no airport at all. So their reframe on the next slide, it was I prefer the lake, yo prefiero el lago, which really took off. If you go back one slide, sorry, Melandri, it really took off. So the narrative reframe basically moved to the streets. It became a slogan of the movement. And it's really important to mention here that as narrative practitioners, we're always thinking about movement strategy. So narrative work goes hand in hand with community organizing. Narrative work is really only as effective as the community organizing and community building through which the narratives are spread. And on the next slide, you'll see another impact of the hack, that this reframe, yo prefiero el lago, this third option of no airport at all, this proactive framing of I prefer the lake, it was replicated around Mexico and Central America more broadly. Other activists were using this kind of meme to stop extractivist, externally imposed neoliberal projects like I prefer the mountain, I prefer the river, and so on. And in 2023, actually, the land was rematurated, and the ancient lake is now part of a massive ecological reserve that will provide clean air for the Mexico City dwellers for years and years and years to come. And it was an incredible hack, and I would recommend you look at the case studies online, because it will show you how we did the research, the big and small listening, the mapping and identifying narrative communities, which we're not going into depth now. But if you're interested, please do let us know. We're very happy to talk to you more about the bits and bobs of the steps. But for now, we're going to skip. We wanted to tell you another case study, but we're actually going to skip through that one, because I think we want to get to the exercise so you guys can start doing some work yourself. And so we are going to delve into one part of the method. As Melandri mentioned, there are 5, and we're going to give you a practical taste of the 4th step, which is recode. And so here it's after we've done our listening, or another word for research and data collection, after we've identified narratives and mapped them on this graph, and after we've decided which ones to intervene in and which audiences will be most appropriate to speak to. And then we do this recode step that sets us up for seeding these reframes and narratives in the world through cultural interventions and campaigns and movement work. So this step is basically you do a decode and a recode using the tools from linguistic analysis. And we find a representative message of our target audience, and then we do a full decoding and then reframing process. And here you can see this picture of an iceberg, because we always talk about narratives like icebergs. You have this visible part above the surface of the water and a hidden part under. And the part that's visible are the messages and the stories that you see. And underneath the water are the deeper layers of the narrative at work that's often doing this work on the cognitive subconscious level. And if you're interested about this dynamics, would recommend George Lakoff's book, Don't Think of an Elephant. He goes into all of these subconscious bodily workings. And there are many different linguistic tools, but we're listing 5 here because they're a bit easier to grasp, and they might resonate with you. So you can take them away and do some decoding in your actual activist work. So number 1, verbs. We're looking at the verbs of the message. We're thinking about what is happening. Number 2, we're thinking about subjects and objects. Who is acting? Who is being affected? Who has agency? Number 3 is frames. So what lens is being used? Number 4 are hidden assumptions. So we want to think about what is taken for granted, what is seen as normal, presented as true, what is not said. And finally, ideologies. So this is looking at, what kind of world does this story or message believe in? And these are the isms like, I don't know, neoliberalism, feminism, and so on. And there are many other further tools, from logics to metaphors to syntax to nominalization, but we won't go into them now. If you want to know more, you can look through our method. So on the next slide, we'll set you up for our exercise and give you a bit of a, actually first Melandri will give you a little taste of how we do a decoding with subjects and objects and verbs and hidden assumptions, and then we're going to stop and do one together. So I'll pass it to Melandri.
So here we have an example of a message. So I'll read it out loud for everyone. So it says, during the Climate Leaders Summit celebrated at the White House, President Biden explained how the United States will lead the creation of a green global economy. So we're going into the next slide where we can see the breakdown of this. So here we're looking at the subjects, objects, and verbs for the sake of the exercise. And so again, as Tiffany said, the subject is who is doing the action, the verb is what are they doing, and object is what is being acted upon. So if we look at who is doing the acting here, the subject is the USA, embodied in a single leader, Biden. Not a movement, not a coalition, not the countries that are most affected by climate breakdown. One man and one nation at the center. The verbs confirm this position. He's explaining. He explains, which means he holds knowledge that others do not have. And he will lead, which means that somebody else is going to be following. Both of these verbs again place the USA at the front and everyone else behind. But what is being led toward? A global green economy. The entire planetary system here becomes an object, just something to be designed, shaped, and built. By whom? By the leader that just explained it to us. So now we'll look at the hidden assumptions. What is being presented here, and is it positive or negative? And what can we infer from this? So as we go deeper beneath the words to what is simply taken for granted, the Climate Leaders Summit assumes that there's a group of people who get to decide about the climate. They're not negotiating, not consulting, they're making the decisions. The summit's name tells you who belongs in that room, and by implication, who doesn't. When Biden explains, he's not asking anyone. He isn't opening a conversation. The decisions have just already been made. He's transmitting conclusions downward, and this is a grammar of empire. There's no dialogue, it's an announcement. And then finally, there's the object being announced, a global green economy. There are 3 assumptions buried here. First, that this economy doesn't yet exist, that what communities around the world already built does not count until the US names and leads it. Second, that the green is self-evidently good. The word does moral work so that the sentence doesn't have to. And finally, that the rest of the world needs the US, who then designs this future for them. This isn't climate leadership. This is just green capitalism wearing a new suit. And finally, whose voices are absent here? The communities that are on the front lines of climate breakdown, the countries that have contributed least and lost the most, the knowledge systems that have been sustaining living economies for generations. None of them are in this sentence. On the surface, this message comes across very positively, but when we decode it, we really just find a familiar story of powerful actors leading rather than frontline communities, and the economy, even a green one, as the solution, and the world as something to be managed. So this is an idea of what a reframe message could be. So here we have communities around the world are already building diverse place-based alternatives to extractive economies, challenging green capitalism. So as we look at this rewritten sentence, we already see this idea that of this reframe moving power from the center to the edges, and from a single nation state promising future leadership to diverse communities already building decentralized living alternatives in specific places. It also does something that the original message doesn't do, and it names what the alternatives are pushing against, which is this idea of green capitalism, which is not framed as a solution here. It's part of the problem.
So thanks so much, Melandri, for talking us through an example. And what we want you guys to do now is go old school and get a piece of paper and a pen, or you can, of course, use your laptops or phones. And we're going to have a little moment, probably 15 minutes or so, let's see how it goes, to try and do a basic decode. And we've chosen this quite simple message, but it's got a lot of juicy below the surface deconstructions waiting for you. And we really want you to just focus on these two because they're quite easy to grasp. But if you feel like you've got them, let us know and we'll give you some more questions. So we want you to look at the subjects, objects, and verbs and the hidden assumptions behind this message that I will read out. You're also very, very welcome to choose your own that's more relevant for your movement. So this one is: an Indigenous activist died following clashes during a land dispute over a mining project. And let's just imagine the interlocutor, the person who said that, is just mainstream media journalist. If you go to the next slide, it will be a bit more clear exactly what you want to think of. And brilliant. Thanks so much, Esther, for pasting that in the chat. We'll also paste these questions in the chat here. And please don't hesitate to message in the chat and have a bit of a dialogue with us as you're doing it. If you're confused about the decoding, or if you're trying to find an appropriate messages from your own activism and you want to check if it's going to work. So we'll give you until, let's say, 5 past the hour. For us, it's 5 past 11 p.m. And then we will do a bit of a sharing back. And if Melandri and Esther, if you want to add any instructions or comments as people set themselves up, please chime in.
I just want to invite us to try and do the exercise. And I know there's some questions on the Zoom chat, more general questions about the methodology and how to do the stuff and everything, which I completely understand because it's a lot. But I think we can focus now on the activity, and then we can go back to the questions and how it went, and have a nice space for questions and reflections. I'm taking note of the questions. Yeah, and I think we can, if you want, we can play some nice background music for a while. And if there's any specific question for the exercise, please say, and the three of us can try and answer that. Meanwhile, you are testing this decoding and recoding. Okay, we're coming back. We noticed you catch it very well, and you've been so fast. And yeah, you're so active and sharing a lot on the Zoom chat. So we think it's a good time to try and see where you came up with. Like, if you'd like, we think it would be a good time for you to raise your hand if you want and share, because we've seen some sharings on the chat about the exercise. How was it for you? Did you find it easy? What would you say were the subjects, objects, verbs? Can you analyze some of the elements? Melandri, Tiffany, I don't know if you want to say anything before we open the mics.
Would love to hear from you guys. Then we can give you our ideas as well after.
Sure. Okay. Subjects: the activist, the allies, the indigenous tribe, all the land protectors, the land itself, and whether that includes water or what have you, but the land itself is a subject. Outside group, I'm just, and when I wrote a reframing sentence, I just decided that they were foreign because this is just too much like Standing Rock. This is exactly like Standing Rock. So we have foreign company, we have corrupt local and state officials, we have private police who are violent, we have police borrowed from other states and other communities, also violent. Let me see here. Oh, and we have government officials who pretend to be nice and don't do anything useful. That would be Obama. Verbs. Well, there's died. Clash refers to a verb. Violence refers to a verb. The framing is amoral in that there were no responsibility. Things that are hidden were all these various groups and any kind of values and the fact that profit is involved and the corruption and that there might be consequences. Nowhere was it mentioned that there might be sacred things going on in the land, and various interest groups. Ideologists, capitalist, colonial, and we have these words here, wasichu and wediko. So that's my list, and I did write a sentence, but I'll stop because there are other people here.
Wow, that was so complete. Tiffany, Melandri, I think you maybe want to answer to that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shodo, and thanks for bringing your input of Standing Rock and what resonates. Absolutely, I think you've really hit the hammer on the nail there. It's yeah, thank you for sharing your feedback. Exactly, the sentences naming the person who died, but not too acted upon them, and turning a politically produced death into something with a neutral outcome. These clashes and disputes seen as a kind of a parallel playing field with no power dynamics. And Claudia, please give us your feedback or input or thoughts or feelings or resonance.
Thank you. So sorry, I'm a bit tired. It's 11 o'clock here in the evening, and I've been at this since 9:30 this morning. So first, I just want to say I think that Tiffany, I love your name; it's fantastic, and Melandri, I love your voice; it's really beautiful. So I just want to put that out there. So it makes the whole thing much easier to listen to and watch. So I'm half asleep, but I could tell you that maybe the indigenous activist was the subject, and died was the verb, and also land dispute was a verb. And then the thing that perhaps wasn't being said was that the mining project had to go ahead. There was some sort of inferred subtext that there was no choice about this. I don't know if I'm on the right track, but yeah, I guess that's what I got from this. And also, what was the land dispute about, and what was it over? That there was no kind of background information about this. And then I agreed with the last person who spoke about that there was probably some kind of spiritual element to this, and there was some with the land, with the like an indigenous land ceremony or something like that wasn't mentioned because the mainstream press doesn't really talk about things like that. So I don't know if I'm on the right track, but I was just thinking, like, to take a kind of step back from all of this. And I wrote it on the chat. This is exactly what teenagers need to be learning about at school. I mean, this is like, it's so it should be so embedded in the education of teenagers all around the world. I don't think younger children would get this, but I think teenagers would. And I think that it's really powerful. I've never thought about this stuff before, so it's really illuminating. Thank you so much for running this session.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Yeah, I completely agree. This is like basic media literacy. It's that metaphor that people often use with regards to narrative is the water we're swimming in. Like the fish asks another fish, like, what is water? You know, like you've never thought about this. It's like, what is the texture? What is the water that we're all swimming in? And often when you don't know it, we are swimming in neoliberal waters because they try to depoliticize and try to present themselves as apolitical or non-ideological. And it's such important literacy that we need to develop in ourselves and the younger generation. So yeah, thanks for that comment. And you're absolutely on the right track with the decoding, and it's obviously coming to you super intuitively. So thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to share some context, some feedback rather from the exercise? I saw someone in the chat earlier was sharing some great feedback as well. I don't know if you want to come and use your voice, or we can highlight it for you. Yeah, it was you. Please.
Hi, everybody. I think everyone's thinking is changing, the interpretation moment to moment. I think even the primary subject of an Indigenous activist is like, it's so interesting that it relates to everybody from different contexts. Everybody has seen genuinely an Indigenous activist harmed within their own communities, and yet the framing where there's no name to them, right? So if this was a local news article headline, the name would be there. It wouldn't be Indigenous activists. It would be this person of this province or this community has lost their lives. And so even the generality, even though it allows us to like access how universal these sorts of harms are, it's so like, it's almost like the Indigenous activist makes it like it's a regular casualty, regular something that like what you were saying, that like the mining project will go ahead. This was just something that was necessary.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight there and also all your comments. These have been really useful. Absolutely. And also, wait, Justin, did you raise your hand? Feel free to come in.
Is it okay
chime in if you want.
Is it all right? Yeah.
Who's speaking?
It's Justin.
Oh, it's
Hey,
Justin.
Tiffany.
I couldn't see you. Hey. Go for it.
I think the invitation, I didn't know if I thought that was, so I hopped in. I just want to say, like, yeah, I mean, like, you're working my heart, working my mind, working my, it's a lot, it's a lot. There's like levels happening at one time because it does start to reshape everything you're taking in, right? But you're also I'm looking at like, what have I said? What am I doing? What have I taken in? Like, it's a little bit of everywhere, at all places. It's probably rhizomatic, right? It's like all the things coming at you in a really deep way. And so, what I thought to do, I thought the prompt was great, but you said like maybe take it to your own context. So I thought, okay, let's go for that. And so I gave a talk yesterday at the Presidency Institute for like Region and Futures Labs. We're trying to bring like relational infrastructure to college students in order to support them and like, overcoming some of the developmental gaps that we feel like are at the root of all challenges that we're facing as humanity, right? So I brought your slides to Gemini. I was like, hey, Gemini, let's do this for the speech from yesterday. And it was like, okay, so started framing against like the old paradigm. And I was like, no. I want you to make it about my speech. Like, where am I missing? Where am I talking in the language and in ways that are actually still propagating things I don't actually want to bring into the world in this way, right? And so it did that. It took my words and began to break down like where I was using grammar of power. So talking about how I was going to help students or how they needed some support or what we were going to do to them, right? And it was kind of like pointing out a lot of the ways where I was making the students an object by which they had to receive something from me in order to be able to be well in the world. And the answer was like, that's not really true, right? That's not really what this is about. And so it started to restructure that to the iceberg model. So what were my hierarchical assumptions, right? We need to bring them, we need to impart upon them, we hold the wisdom, we hold the technology, right? And these students in the last session, right, were like already debunking that. The kids from the youth transition were like, no, we know the answers, we're good to go. Like, yeah. So it started to deconstruct all that, right? How was I creating separation from my own language, right? That we need to, in the same type of way, right? How are we trying to really leverage an intervention and make the thing itself like the way by which this thing had to come about, even though the thing we're pointing to is actually a living dynamic that already exists in the world. All these different ways that by which, just was wrong. And so it helped to kind of find new verbiage, new objects, and what it kind of brought back was like a more holistic statement from I didn't read the original, but just what it said was like higher education is like a living laboratory where we, students, guides, and institutions together practice relational technologies co-creating the capacity for wayfinding so that we can collectively navigate the developmental gap and reconnect to ourselves, each other, systems dying and coming alive, and the earth itself. And so it went from like my organization or my group kind of imparting something onto students to like recognizing that this was actually a whole living ecosystem and that we were part of it. And I think that was just really powerful. For me, that was it's what I already feel and know to be true, but I'm oftentimes afraid or stuck in language or linguistics that don't allow me to say that thing. And so I was just really glad for that opportunity to bring that forward here today through your process. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Justin. Wow. And please do, all of you, actually share your organization links in the chat. It sounds like we've got lots of collaborating work to do going forward. Angela, please.
Thanks a lot. I find it really amazing the political side, how you interpret it politically, because theoretically, for I don't know many years, I've been working on other side of language from. Well, it's a long story, but it's a very different approach. But the result, I mean, what you can do with it, it's really, really impressive. Well, it would be a long story. So it's just congratulations on your work. And I'd love to know more and to discuss it more. Thanks a lot. Beautiful women. You're really beautiful women.
Oh,
nice.
Thank you. Thank you for your work and your kind words. And yes, let's discuss it more. Melandri and I will share our emails, and we're building a movement here. We're building narrative movements because narrative is such a unused resource to cohere movements. It's like narrative is the vocalization of movement. It is movement building at its core. And I think we should leverage this tool not only for the next generation to become more literate to the water we swim in and the ideological manipulation that we're in, but to connect and build. And I think, very exciting work. So I'm glad it resonates. Esther, do you think we open the floor for more questions, or should we round up and start going to your housekeeping bits and bobs?
Thank you. I think we have still a bit like
We have some more time. Perfect.
7 minutes more. If people are not too tired to keep discussing, I see you very engaged. Actually, I spotted a couple really interesting questions on the Zoom chat. If anybody has any now.
Just a quick compliment
Sure.
to Esther, because I did some training with you ages ago, and it's amazing to see you here. Just really powerful.
Let me voice one of the questions that I spotted in the chat right at the beginning. I think it's really helpful and useful for everyone. Someone asked, I think it was Shulo, asked, I'd like to know how you get to the point where you are asking and listening, how to start, what is your role with the community, how did you begin? I think it's a really interesting one. Like, okay, how do we begin to apply this methodology, right? I don't know if Melandri, Tiffany, you'd like to share a bit.
Maybe just some clarification. How do we begin as activists? Just where do we start if we want to do this kind of narrative work? Is this what you mean, maybe?
What I mean is you have a topic and a group that you're presenting something to. How do you get them to pay attention? If you're in a room with a group of people, how did you get there? And otherwise, so the reframing has an audience. How do you get an invitation to that audience?
So it's a big question. I'll try and reduce it super concise for a minute or so. I would say that we have techniques through the method that from step A to B to C to D to E, you do get to an audience that seems to be the most strategic audience whom you want to speak to. And then you are, of course, finding methods to know where the audience lives, like know which platforms they use, which I don't know, which parts of town they go to, and you can design interventions that will activate them or be in spaces that they feel familiar with, or places they'll catch their attention. And we do have tools and techniques to know how to do that based on narrative practitioner work. So again, we can send you that part of the method online that might help a bit. But yeah, it's a much bigger question. So let's email us after, and we can support you to try and find your audiences.
Thank you.
Claudia, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you have any other questions. And I see Rakesh's hand now.
Rakesh, go first. I've already spoken.
Yeah, I want to see if I can frame this carefully enough. I'd like to offer a different viewpoint on this work, as you know, with the intention of inviting you to think about how this comes across to people like me who are not educated in the same way that you are. So I went to school in a part of East London where we weren't even told what verbs or adjectives or anything like that was. So to break a sentence down in this particular way seems very, well, it's beyond me. It's absolutely, you know, it was mind-boggling. I couldn't work out half of what you were saying. Most of the words were just way over my head. So if you're looking for this work to really appeal to, to really work with, different peoples, well, you left me behind completely and made me feel even more underprivileged for not understanding language in the same way that you understand it. So I'm saying this in the spirit of, if the work you're trying to do is really trying to embolden and give strength to different peoples around the world, it had quite the opposite effect on me personally because of my lack of education in the same way that you've been educated in terms of language. So yeah, so it's just an invitation for you to think about how could this be more open to people who aren't in the privilege, haven't had the privilege of the same education.
Rakesh, thank you so much for your comments and your heartfelt invitation for us. And absolutely, I hear you, and we do get this feedback a lot. So just also to say that you're not alone. We often have people who feel that, especially not only this decode that we did and these technical terms, but this jargon that we use, like ontological shift, we've had a lot of feedback that, what the hell, this means nothing, especially if you're also working on the front lines, like what is this ivory tower academic jargon? So we're also very aware of this. And I would also like to say that usually we do have a much more elongated process where we really talk through people and take their hand where they are and talk them through what these terms are in a very, very accessible way. And this is just, I would say, a great invitation for even these short presentations where we give a taste to not lose people and do a better job also of bringing people along in these short contexts. Because if you were part of our research or our fellowship, we would be very much there with you from the start, supporting and deconstructing the words so you don't feel allergic or feel that it's not for you or something. So yeah, thank you so much for your feedback. Really, really appreciate it. Very much taken on board for these short sessions. Also, a personal note, if you're interested in this work and would like a little bit more context and being walked through it, please do email us, and we would be so happy to talk to you personally about more accessible ways and open ways of accessing it. So we'll send our email. Well, you have our emails on the slide. So please do reach out. We're very open. Claudia?
Thank you. So, Rakesh, it's really great that you just brought that up, because that's exactly what I was thinking as well, and how a lot of this is inaccessible to a lot of people with different kind of educational backgrounds and what have you. I also didn't learn much of this stuff at school either, but that's a problem with the British and North American educational system. In most other countries, people do learn the grammar of their own language, but that is one of the reasons why, I learned this stuff because I work with languages, and I had to learn this stuff because you can't work with languages unless you know this stuff. But one of the reasons why I think that this stuff should be on the curriculum for teenagers around the world is that you learn about the nitty-gritty of the language and the grammar and the syntax of the language through doing something to improve the environment, and by having a greater understanding of the world and the what's going on in the world. So you don't just learn in a dry context about verbs and adjectives and whatnot, but you learn it through the realities of what's going on in the world. And this is it's so relevant. And also with all the fake news that's going on with, on social media, by learning this stuff, you learn how to distinguish what's fake news and what isn't. So I think this is I hate the expression to kill two birds with one stone, but to use such an expression, this is like killing 1,000 birds with one stone. I mean, it's amazing. It's like doing everything all at once, which is, yeah, awesome. I'll stop talking now. Thank you.
I can actually share a narrative hack to that quote or saying. I heard liberating two birds with one, how was it? Like opening the cage. Someone help me, the word. With one turn, like liberating two birds with one turn, like turning or opening the door's cage. So we can use that hack if you want. Yeah, I don't know if Melandri, Tiffany, you want to share any final words, or else we will get going to our closure. I love the version that Rakesh is providing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm really touched by everyone's comments, and yeah, Rakesh, thank you as well for your reflections. It's something that we have come across as well with other people. And also I think coming from a country with very low literacy rates, South Africa, it's definitely something that we've been thinking about, and to make it a little bit more accessible. We are actually translating the methodology into Spanish, so that's a different form of accessibility, but we will definitely take into consideration what you've said. So thank you. And yeah, thank you in general to everyone for being a part of this space. It was really beautiful and heartwarming to be here and to be able to see that the work resonates with many of you. So much love.